Welcome to Community News Podcast, Pillars of the Community, where we celebrate the accomplishments, the support, the benefits that individuals, businesses, institutions, and organizations have been providing our community for many, many years. Today, we'd like to introduce you to two outstanding pillars of the community that work with Bread for the World. It's a wonderful organization. It's an international organization that provides a lot of support and reaches out to the Congress to help them motivate the efforts to provide food for the needy of the world. To begin with, we have Peter England. And Peter comes from a marketing background, and also he worked with the Camilla's House for many, many years. And we also have Florence French, which is interesting. We have an England and we have a French here today, but they're going to be peaceful, and they're not going to battle over any of the territory on the desk today. So welcome to the event, to the podcast, and please tell us a little bit about yourself. Florence, would you begin with you?
Sure. So I have been an organizer with Bread for the World for about 10 years. And my background is actually in printing. So it's really interesting being here today and seeing all of the magazines and such. But I joined Bread for the World about 10 years ago and have learned so much in the process about why individuals experience food insecurity and poverty. Before coming to Bread for the World, I really had no understanding. And honestly, I never struggled with food insecurity myself. So I didn't know that it was an issue. So every day I learn more about the root causes of hunger and how they can be addressed through federal legislation, which is Bread for the World's focus.
Peter?
Yeah, thank you, Harry. Yeah, I've lived here in Palmetto Bay actually for the last 40 years. I'm a member of the St. Louis Catholic Church congregation, and it was through St. Louis Church that I first became acquainted with Bread and its work. The pastor of our church, Monsignor Fetcher, was a member of Bread for the World. And just to give you a sense of their laser focus, we were located right in the heart of then Congressman Dante Fascell's congressional district. Dante, at that point, was the chair of the House Foreign Relations Committee, and as such was really pivotal to the work of Bread for the World in trying to address hunger on a global basis. And I was so impressed. They sent a delegation down to talk to us at St. Louis. I was so impressed with their focus, the fact that they did all of this background work, did very careful research to determine what was the most important issue this year. And it was that sense of focus, I think, that really attracted me to Bread for the World. You know, I've been a member of a number of organizations that tried to address a whole multitude of really important issues, but you can't do it all at the same time. And it was Bread's focus that brought all the resources of their organization and all of their grassroots participants to bear on a single issue. And as a consequence, they've had a tremendous track record of success over the years. And that's I think, what most attracted me to Bread for the World.
Can the two of you share with us about Art Simon and how this all began?
Sure. I'll start, but then you should finish off because you probably had a relationship with him.
I did.
So Art Simon was the founder of Bread for the World back in the 70s. I had the honor of meeting him when I joined Bread for the World. And the first thing that he told me to do was speak to grassroots leaders. As you learn more about Bread and the work that we're doing and your role in it, really develop relationships with grassroots leaders to understand what is it that they care about and what is it that they do. And that brought me to Peter England. Peter was actually one of the very first leaders that I met in Florida, really, and really became my mentor and has taught me so much.
Your office is located?
Our office is located in Washington, D.C., but I'm physically located here in Florida, and there are other organizers throughout the entire country.
And you live in
Deerfield Beach.
in Deerfield Beach, and you came down here via Brightline.
Correct.
And how was the ride?
Oh, it's wonderful. I use it all the time.
Good. We're glad you do. So this began in the 1970s or 1975?
1974 was the start. Art Simon was a Lutheran minister in the Lower East Side of Manhattan, and he got together with his fellow pastors down there to determine how could they act out on the scriptural admonition to feed the poor. You know, that's a difficult task in this very complex society. Now, I will also point out to you that Art Simon's brother was Paul Simon, who was a United States senator from Illinois. So he had some sense of
Not
what
the artist.
Not the singer.
not the singer. No, the United States senator. So he had some sense of what Congress could do. And that's when they kind of came up with the idea that what they needed to do was to appeal to Congress. And I have an analogy on that, which really dates me. But there was a very famous bank robber in the city of New York by the name of Willie Sutton. And when Willie Sutton was finally apprehended and interviewed by the press, they asked him, "Why do you rob banks?" And Willie said, "Because that's where the money is." Well, you know what? Congress is where the money is. And Art Simon figured that out, that in order to really make a difference in the lives of people in need who were hungry, you had to systemically change policy to address those needs by the United States Congress.
Does Bread for the World lobby on behalf of the people that need food around the world? Do you reach out to Congress? Do you write letters? Do you try to convince them to allocate more funds for the needy?
All of the above. And to that end, as an example, at St. Louis Church this past weekend, we had our annual offering of letters where we asked the congregation to sit down with us after each Mass and write letters to their members of Congress, both senators and their individual member of the United States House. In addition, I'll be going to Washington next month for their annual Advocacy Summit, which we actually walk the halls of Congress to talk to our legislators personally. All of that makes a difference. I think Bread for the World enjoys a really excellent reputation with Congress because they know we're not some high-priced K Street lobbyists. We are volunteers. We are there trying to live out our faith by advocating for those in need.
I think it's also important to mention that we are a faith-based advocacy organization. We are ecumenical and we are nonpartisan, which is another reason why we're able to get meetings with Congress, right? Because at the end of the day, what we care about is the average constituent that is struggling with food security and poverty. It is not about politics, but it is about how do we take care of people.
So is the most effective tool that you have the fact that you go to Congress or that you convince volunteers to write letters to Congress?
Both. Both. But it's not either or. It's both and it's phone calls, it's emails, it's letter writing. It's a great ministry for those who are, let's say, homebound or handicapped. They can act out their faith by writing letters. They don't need to physically do anything. On the other hand, it's also important, I think, for us to represent the causes we care about in person in front of our members of Congress. I had a meeting yesterday afternoon with the local staff from Congressman Jimenez's office. They all know Bread for the World. Bread for the World has established, I think, a very credible reputation with the United States Congress.
Yeah, we work with about 300 congregations across the country.
So this is a national campaign that you reach out to congressmen. This is not an international effort?
Well, we do both. Right now, the campaign that we're working on is called Nourish Our Future, which focuses on the WIC program, Women, Infants, and Children, as well as the SNAP program, otherwise known as food stamps. And then globally, we work on 3 programs. One is called Food for Peace, McGovern Dole, and I forget the name of the third one. I apologize. But all of these programs focus on nutrition and the importance, especially of moms when they're pregnant, to receive the proper nutrition for their babies. And then between the ages of birth through 5, really continuing that support with nutrition so that brain development develops as it should, and the trajectory of the life of these individuals is the best that it can be.
So I see that you have some serious numbers here. $5 billion for raised humanity efforts, 5 million constituent contacts with Congress, and 1 million reached by message of hope. Those are the letters that people send in.
Mm-hmm.
Do they mostly handwrite them, or do they type them, or it doesn't matter?
Again, both and. What we do at St. Louis is ask our congregation to actually sit down and handwrite a letter, pen and ink, the old-fashioned way.
And then they mail it.
No. We hand carry these letters directly to these members of Congress. No mail involved. It's difficult actually to get a letter through to a member of Congress these days, ever since the anthrax scare.
Mm-hmm.
Because what happens is all of this congressional mail gets folded, spindled, and mutilated, so that by the time it gets there, you're never really sure what condition it's going to be in. So I'm going to be hand carrying letters to Washington when I go there next month.
You receive the handwritten letters or the typed letters from the volunteers.
Yes.
But they mail them to you.
No. I mean, we actually collect them at the end. At the end of this last weekend, I collected almost 700 letters from our members of our congregation and from our Covenant School. The school children have been very, very active in writing letters to members of Congress. It's a great start for them, Harry.
And what St. Louis does and other churches is, for example, St. Louis last weekend, they had a volunteer speak at the lectern after each Mass to prepare the congregation for the offering of letters. And then at the end of Mass, they encourage them to go into the family center, in their case, to actually write their letters. Now that there are individuals who choose to write their letters digitally, and that is fine as well. But what's important about these letters is that it's not a form letter. You are taking the time to actually express something that is important to you in your own words. Many times people might be sharing a story of how something impacts their own family or someone in their community. And the other important thing about these letters is we're developing relationships with congressional offices. That's what it comes down to. You are building a relationship so that you can build trust, so that now we can sit down like we're doing today and have a conversation about issues and really come up with solutions.
And I'm guessing that the letters that have the most impact are from children.
I would say that's probably true. We always put the letters from our school on the top of the pile because some of them even include little drawings that indicate their concern about the hungry. And God bless kids. They operate. They're naive, and I admire their naivete because it's a lesson, I think, for all of us.
We've had groups with very small children who can't write yet draw pictures on paper plates, and that's their way of advocating.
So, which is your favorite bread? Sourdough? Rye?
I like them all, Harry. In addition to the work I've done as a grassroots volunteer, and by the way, I've been doing this now it will soon be 40 years. So I've had a long history with almost as long as bread has been around. They were kind enough to grace me with 2 terms on their national board of directors, and that was a pretty heady experience. I mean, I'm sitting around the table with people like Bob Dole, Leon Panetta. I mean, they have attracted, I think, within the Washington, D.C. orbit, the best and the brightest to represent bread for the nation. We are really a domestic organization in terms of our organization, but in terms of the scope of our advocacy, it is not only domestic but international as well. For a long time, when Marco Rubio was our United States Senator, he was really our go-to person. He was fearless in advocating for humanitarian foreign aid in Congress. That's not the most popular subject in Congress, but Marco always took a leadership position with that and with the funding for USAID. And by the way, he is a member of the St. Louis Church Parish.
So you see him every time you go to Congress?
I try to see him as often as I can, but I don't see him in Congress anymore. He's Secretary of State now.
Does he ever come down this way?
I learned that his wife Jeanette was at mass this past weekend, but he was not. I mean, he's off somewhere. He's in some part of. He's going to see the Pope tomorrow.
He did join us for a meeting over Zoom, I'm going to say in 2021 or 2022.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember that meeting because we were talking about food insecurity for college students. And I remember he was really shocked when he heard about the extent of food insecurity for people who are just trying to get an education.
A lot of ramen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know those days, those lean days.
Exactly right. The gee whiz fun fact, and I think I told you this earlier, Harry, was that we applaud the work of all of these churches and feeding organizations throughout the United States. But when you roll up all of that advocacy, it doesn't amount to 10% of the funding that is provided by the federal government. The federal government is still the 800-pound gorilla in the room, and we just need to keep that gorilla properly trained to expend those funds in the right direction.
And that's why the recent cuts that have happened to SNAP and even to WIC recently is devastating, right? Because people are already struggling. Even if you're receiving SNAP benefits, you don't make it to the end of the month, right? SNAP just fills a little bit of the gap, and that's why they're having to go to a food bank.
How much has it been reduced since the last administration?
$187 billion, I believe.
Billion with
cut.
a B?
Yeah, so it was cut by about a third. The demographic that's whose food insecurity is growing the fastest right now are seniors who are 60 and over.
So if the federal government is reducing the budget, which means that these people that are use SNAP are going to get less food, less calories, in order to not starve, they really have to depend upon individual organizations to help them out, like churches. Is that correct?
That's right, churches and other food pantries. But the food pantries are also experiencing challenges because their funding has been cut by the federal government. So
H.R. 1, which passed last year, the quote, big beautiful bill, took a big whack out of a lot of these hunger programs. We are working hard now to see that some of these cuts are restored through the Farm Bill, which is still pending. It's passed the House, but it has not gone through the Senate yet. The Farm Bill, and you when you hear the Farm Bill, you think of farmers. Well, it's a 900-page bill, and in there, all of the SNAP benefits are included,
as well as farming programs.
So it seems to me that the big beautiful bill is not really benefiting these individuals.
Well, it depends. Yeah, the big beautiful bill is a mixed blessing to residents of the United States.
Okay, that's being very diplomatic.
Yes, it is.
So what can the public do to get involved with you? Can you give them the email address to send out letters, to reach you, to correspond with you? How can they help fund you? How can they help make your visions a reality?
All good questions. So our national website is bread.org. If you want to reach me as your organizer for the state of Florida, you can reach me at ffrench@bread.org, or you can call me or text me at 561-223-5944. If you believe that you're already ready to make a commitment to the work of Bread for the World by getting involved in our Offering of Letters campaign, you can go to bread.org/OL and just hit Take Action, and you'll be able to make a commitment. We are, as I said, a nonpartisan faith-based organization. We do not receive any funding from the federal government. All of our funding comes from churches, individuals, and foundations. So if you feel moved to financially support Bread for the World, on the website, you'll be able to navigate your way to there.
Peter?
Yeah, and I'd like to point out as well that St. Louis Catholic Church is a covenant church of Bread for the World, and that each year our Holy Thursday offering is given to Bread for the World as our contribution as a covenant church of Bread. We are very closely linked to the organization.
I just wanted to go over a couple of little quotes that I discovered recently. If thou tastes a crust of bread, thou taste all the stars. That's Robert Browning. Give us this day our daily bread. That's Matthew 6:11. Matthew 4:4. Man shall not live on bread alone, but on every word that comes from the mouth of God.
What food insecurity is. It literally means that you don't know where your next meal is coming from. Nationally, 47 million people, 47 million Americans are food insecure. And here in the state of Florida, that is 1 out of 7 adults and 1 out of 5 children.
Wow, that's a lot.
It's a lot of people.
That's a lot.
So chances are that, there are 5 people in this room right now. One of us knows someone who's food insecure.
Last week, I went to Crisis Food Pantry in Coconut Grove, and I was probably the only, or maybe the second, Caucasian in the place. And the people there were very thin, very hungry, very grateful and gracious to be there, to be fed by the Coconut Grove Food Pantry. And it was a very enlightening experience for me. And I had a wonderful time. I met some wonderful people. I met some wonderful volunteers. And going home to my apartment and my refrigerator and my air conditioning and my bed and my shower, I felt very blessed. And I'm sure that the people that you are helping that are having issues with food insecurity are very pleased and grateful for all your help. Even though they may not know who you are, they are probably blessing you in their prayers. Thanks.
You.
Let me give you one more analogy from our founder, Art Simon. He said he didn't want to be the ambulance driver at the bottom of the cliff dealing with those poor folks that had fallen off. He wanted to be the fence maker at the top of the cliff that kept people from falling off in the first place. That's the role of Bread for the World. All of these advocacy organizations are important, but wouldn't it be great if we were able, through our own federal nutrition programs, to keep people from going hungry in the first place?
Sure.
And it's important for us to understand why food insecurity exists. One of the main reasons is people don't make enough of a living wage. In the state of Florida, you need to make at least $32 an hour to afford a 2-bedroom apartment. But the minimum wage is $15. So even if you have 2 minimum wage jobs, you're still just making enough money for rent. Let that sink in. There's something called ALICE, Asset Limited Income Constrained and Employed. This is a term that the United Way developed. And these are people who are working people who are still struggling. And if they're trying to do better and they get, let's say they get $1 raise, if they were receiving SNAP benefits or housing assistance, they lose those benefits, but they're worse off because of that $1.
God, that's terrible.
50% of Floridians are ALICE.
Peter, last words?
I just thank you for giving us the opportunity to share with your audience the work of Bread for the World. It is an extraordinary organization, and I'm really proud to have been a member of it.
We want to thank you both for being here. We want to thank the audience for being there. We want to remind the audience that it's important for you to get involved in your community, for you to go to your commission meetings, for you to challenge the power brokers on zoning and on traffic and on crime, and be a spokesperson for your community. And remember that it's not how important your community serves you, but how you serve your community. Thank you very much.